It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith. Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, I've been getting tons of email on this, on the derailment and asking the question, where's the federal government been? And yesterday on the program, we talked about the response from the DOT, from the EPA being there, almost immediately, and how, the reality is that this falls on the states. The governor has to request a lot of this other stuff, and oh boy, no one happy with that response. But hey, that's how our system is set up. I love my conservative friends who tell me they believe in states' rights. And then when I say this is a states' rights issue, not happy about it. I'm here to share some thoughts on what's going on the ground in East Palestine and, what the federal government can and should be doing and what we should be doing long term in the aftermath of this. I've asked Congressman Chris Delusio to come talk with us. Congressman represents the 17th Congressional District here in Pennsylvania. Congressman, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, Rick, thanks for having me on.
So let's start with the first point there. As I understand it, FEMA or the EPA was there, DOT was there. There were a number of federal agencies on the ground when this happened, as they were supposed to. This is how the gig works, right? FEMA's not jumping in. The federal government isn't taking these things over. These are states' issues, right?
Yeah, and look, on my side of the border in Pennsylvania, and for folks who don't know, people I represent in Beaver County in Pennsylvania were evacuated. They were within that zone, like the folks in East Palestine were. My governor, Josh Shapiro, anything that the state has needed from the federal government, they're getting. And part of my job and the senators who I'm working with is to make sure that's happening. And I understand on the Ohio side, same thing, whether it's EPA, CDC, the National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, that's who's going to do and is doing the investigation. They're doing it. And anything that we're getting asked from our state counterparts, we're making sure is delivered to these folks. And frankly, that's gone right from the president, that whatever the federal government needs to do, they're there.
So let me ask you straight out then, because the reporting that I'm getting is that the people aren't getting what they need, and that there's some failure by the administration. So what are the conditions on the ground? You were there. What did you see?
Look, people are scared. People are mad. And people are worried about their water and their air, their animals, right? And so part of what I'm trying to get out to folks and what I saw is there is testing, air and water. If you want it in your house and you're in that area, it's there. And the federal government's doing the air side of it. The state EPs are doing the water. Those tests are there. And I've been telling people, request them. My office, the Republican across the way in Ohio, same thing. They're there to help people get them. And that's what people ought to do so they feel safe.
Yeah.
And
so now,
that's the most important thing the government could be doing here is making sure your water and your air is safe. Your animals and wildlife are safe.
Now, I'm looking at some of the bomb throwers in Congress, some of your colleagues who are saying, this is all Biden's fault, evidently. There must have been an executive order, who knows? But this is all Biden's fault. It's all the federal government's fault because evidently the water is not safe to drink and they want Biden to drink the water. I'm sure you've seen all this craziness. Yeah. Is this helpful?
Look, it's partisan crap. That's what these guys do. They're fundraising off this stuff. They're looking to get reelected off this stuff. And by the way, if they want to go back and look at history, and I've been in the Congress now, I guess 6 weeks. You want to go back a couple of years, it was Donald Trump and the Republicans carrying water for the railroads, whether it was, rules around staffing, safety, this precision scheduled railroading doctrine, which is right out of Wall Street, where they're extracting every penny of profit they can on the backs of their workers and everything else, and our safety. That's the GOP doing the work of these railroads. And that's the environment in which we have derailments like this, where these railroads are stretching their trains longer. I mean, look, let's be even pretty direct. This railroad and others lobbied against a 2-person staffing requirement. And luckily, there were 3 workers on this train that derailed. And I've heard direct from the union representing those folks that if there weren't 3 of them on there, if there had been 1, they would have been able to take the action they did to help mitigate how bad this could have been. So there are real consequences for this, corporate lobbying and frankly bootlicking we're seeing on the right.
Yeah, I mean, both the trains, one in East Palestine and the one outside of Detroit that derailed. Because again, these derailments are not as infrequent as we're led to believe. They happen quite often. Fortunately, we don't have ones as big as what happened in East Palestine. But this 9,300 feet long. I mean, this is like a mile and a half long train. I don't know how only 3 people can care for that, but good on those workers for being able to, but shame on the industry for forcing them to.
Well, and look, these workers have been beat up for a while. I mean, good luck taking a day of sick leave in that job, which is a tough job on top of everything else. And I think that there is going to be a lot more awareness of how hard this job is, and frankly, that these workers have been sounding the alarm about this industry.
Yeah.
The place I represent, Western PA, like a lot of places in this country, these tracks run through our neighborhoods. They run through our towns. So many of us live close to them, and people are scared about whether this might happen again. I'm sure it will happen somewhere again, but we got to make it so that this isn't the norm, and that when this does happen, that these railroads are held accountable and they make every single person, business, you name it, whole for what they've done.
Now, I find it interesting, and I look at some of your colleagues, some of the bomb throwers, the anti-government folks who are out now screaming, they ran on government shouldn't do anything, can't do anything, we need to privatize everything, now screaming that the government isn't, in their view, doing anything. I find it interesting that people who don't believe in government, when things happen like this, are the first ones to scream and complain that government isn't doing anything. It just seems odd to me.
Well, Rick, here's a basic way to test that. Do you want Norfolk Southern and their contractors to test your water, or do you want your state environmental protection department? Of course you want your state doing that. People don't trust this railroad that just wrecked their neighborhoods. The government is there to do that testing because they don't have a financial stake in this, whereas you've got a railroad who wants to show that their harms were less than they actually caused, less they got to end up paying for this. So I think it's an important lesson in rebuilding some trust and faith in the agencies that are designed to keep us safe and take care of us when something like this, God forbid, happens again.
Now, here's the thing, though, Congressman. Over the summer, we were talking with a number of the rail unions about their contract. And the first thing that's going to get thrown up at you is, well, the president didn't do enough to get those workers sick days, didn't listen to the warnings that were being thrown out. In this environment, it appears to me the only people who got it right were the workers who were saying, hey, we're not working in safe conditions. Hey, look at this. And sadly now, I guess I should pose this as a question. Will we learn from this, or will this be another instance where it's just, hey, bad things happened, and once it's out of the news cycle, it goes away?
I think we have to learn from this. I think we will. I mean, what I'm seeing and hearing on the ground in PA, across the border in Ohio, is people are fired up for something to change. I'm hearing it across the country. I'm hearing it from my colleagues in the House. And, the workers here have been sounding the alarm about this industry, about this precision scheduled railroading, this PSR idea that just maximizes operational efficiency at whatever cost, driven by Wall Street. So I think we're going to be looking hard at what this industry is doing, not just in this specific derailment, but how we prevent the next one. And so that we're not in this situation again, especially when we're hearing it direct from the people who make these railroads run, who do that hard work day in, day out about how we can be safer.
So, but here's the thing, the question then comes down to, what are we going to do? I mean, you tweeted out today, railroads have been squeezing every penny of profit they can at the expense of safety. I'll be fighting for you to hold Norfolk Southern accountable. Great. I want to hear that. But what are you going to do? How do we've given so much power to this industry. We've allowed industry after industry across the country to consolidate and almost monopolize. And that we've given them such enormous power to regulate themselves and police themselves, because there are some who believe, well, government shouldn't be policing. The companies, they'll do what's in their best interest. And I agree, they do, in their own best interest, not ours. How will you hold them accountable? And is there an appetite, since Democrats don't hold the House, to actually hold hearings and to actually get to the bottom of this?
I hope so. I don't know the answer to that yet, of whether the Republicans who control these committees now are going to be tough on these guys. I hope so. I think there's bipartisan interest here. Jury's still out. We'll see. I'm hoping my Republican colleagues are there with us. The things I'd want to see, in the Congress, is we got to look at these staffing levels. We got to look at all of these ways in which the railroads here are stretching to do what they want to do to keep their, operating efficiency at the highest possible point. Stretching out the length of these trains, the number of cars, the kinds of notifications we give to towns, what qualifies as hazardous materials, what that means the railroads have to do. And then, of course, there's the real stuff of the EPA and others making sure that this railroad pays every penny it has to make people whole. Now, I can't control that in the Congress, but I can push the agencies to do exactly that. I know my governor and the team in Harrisburg and Pennsylvania are doing their part on the state side as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot to this, but it comes down to me, Congressman, of basic philosophy. This idea that, and I've had a bunch of conservatives yelling at me that, because I've been advocating for, regulating these industries for years. This idea that regulations are job killers. And I look at this and I go, how many people could have been killed had this gone even worse than it went? So for me, the lack of regulation, to me, is scarier than a couple of extra regulations.
Well, look, if the Republicans want to be the corporate bagmen, they want to be the party that's all about mergers and these huge corporations ripping us off, they should do that, and we'll own them every November. Because the people of this country, I don't care if you're conservative, left, you name it, they're tired of getting ripped off. They're tired of getting pushed around, and workers are tired of not being able to form and join a union and have some say on the job. So if the Republicans want to go fight online, culture war stuff and carry water for huge corporations like Norfolk Southern, go do it. And we'll own you and we'll run this country for people.
Good stuff. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Pennsylvania Congressman Chris Delusio. He represents Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District. I want to change topics real quick and congratulate you on doing something that I've been saying Democrats need to do every day, and that's adopt a striker. The people out at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette have been on strike for, it's several months now. And you took one of the striking workers to the State of the Union address, and good on you for doing that. What made you make that choice?
Look, in my area, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's the paper of record by most accounts, and the ownership there has just been in a brutal fight against their workers for a long, long time. These folks have been without a contract, I think since 2017. They haven't had a pay raise in more than 16 years. And, the owners pulled their health care, and that was enough. They went on strike, and they've been out for more than 4 months now. I was on the picket with those guys this week, and I brought with me as my State of the Union guest down to Washington, Hutchie Van Landingham, one of the mailers at the paper, who's a third-generation worker there. And, this newspaper has been central to our region. They've done great reporting and work over time, but, this current generation of owners doesn't seem to respect the folks who make that paper run, and those workers are fighting. And what I wanted to do was not just, honor Hutchie and these other workers, but bring their fight to the national stage. I mean, people have to listen to what they're standing up for, and frankly, what workers across this country are fighting for as we see more and more strikes, more and more elections, and workers winning those elections.
Yeah, it's great to see, but the sad reality is our labor laws are so badly broken and ossificated that I fear that while we're winning elections and we're seeing all this energy, it doesn't equate to contracts, and it doesn't equate to making lives better. And that's my fear when the employers have this much outweighed power, even with a president who says, he's the most pro-labor, and I don't disagree with him, the most pro-labor president in my lifetime. Our laws are that bad that, even people who want to join and form unions, it's a Herculean leap where it shouldn't be.
Well, that's absolutely right. And I agree. And I was born in 1984. Joe Biden is easily the most pro-union president in my life, but it doesn't change the fact that we need the PRO Act. For folks who don't know what that is, right? It changes so that we get to an equal playing field for workers to form and join a union. So if a company union busts, they actually have some meaningful penalties. For now, you fire someone who's organizing, and maybe you have to pay back wages months, years down the road. That's not enough of a deterrent. It's not enough of a penalty. No. And I think we know, and anyone who's fought for a union knows, those penalties are too weak, and it's too hard to do, especially if you're in a small shop.
Because this is where I'm telling my Democratic friends, folks like you, we need champions right now. Because if you look at what's going on the other side, I'm looking at Iowa. Iowa is right now talking about putting children back into dangerous workplaces and creating an environment where employers can hire children liability free. It's like we're going back to the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s.
Yeah, that's nuts. And look, here's a part of this too for why the PRO Act is so important from where I sit. If we pass the PRO Act, the right to work anti-worker laws across the state go away, or across the states go away. The states that have them, those laws are repealed if we pass the PRO Act. Because what happens is you have such a different landscape state to state where workers in these anti-union states have very few rights, nothing. And as we see manufacturing starting to trickle back to this country, states like mine, where you have a little more dignity as a worker, you have a little more rights to join and form a union, those employers aren't going to bring the job to states like mine. They're going to go the lowest common denominator where they got the most power over their workers.
No, and the way I've been saying for a long time is how we reunite this country is we bring those jobs back because people want those jobs. But more importantly, people don't want factory jobs and manufacturing jobs as much as they want union jobs, as much as they want jobs that pay a good wage with health care and retirement security and job security and being part of a family, of building a community. That's what people are pining for, not those dirty factory jobs that I remember as a kid, but it was the opportunities that it gave them. That's what people want.
Yeah, look, it's the basic pitch of what this American dream is supposed to be. You work hard, you play by the rules, you get a decent life, you go to the doctor when you're sick, your kids go to school, you can retire with dignity. That isn't the reality for too many people in this country, and I'm hoping to be part of doing something to change that.
I'm hoping for you too. Last question I've got for you, back to the derailment. What are we looking at in the next couple of days? How are you seeing things play out? Do you have any thoughts of what we should be watching out for?
Well, we're still in this, as the EPA describes it, this kind of emergency phase where we're doing everything as the government, federal, state, local, to keep people safe, to address these chemicals that were released. That's even before we get into the longer term remediation and mitigation phase of this. So we aren't there yet. So for now, it's making sure folks are safe and feel safe. That's testing air and water, making sure it's okay to be in your home. That's where we are. And this cleanup is really focused on this emergency phase. And there's going to be a long-term, frankly, effort. And I've heard the president's cabinet and the president say the federal government is here as long as it takes, and they got to be. The reps on the other side of the border and me in Pennsylvania were making sure they are, because these people who were affected, my constituents and the folks in Ohio, they deserve to be able to live their lives, not worried about their health, their kids' health. And I think this government got to do everything it can to deliver that.
Absolutely. Representative, I appreciate you taking time for me. I hope you'll come back and share some more thoughts as this continues down the road. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
Good stuff, Congressman Chris Delusio. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break right back after this. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
I'm JD Schulten with Courier News, and I'm here to tell you you're probably getting screwed. In January, we saw tech layoffs from PayPal, IBM, Intel, Spotify, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Salesforce, and more. At the same time, America corporations authorized a record $132 billion in stock buybacks, more than tripling what we saw a year ago. This has become a recent theme: layoffs and stock buybacks. Facebook's parent company, Meta, laid off 13% of its staff, more than 11,000 employees late last fall. Earlier this month, they announced $40 billion in stock buyback. Dell laid off 6,650 workers, or 5% of its workforce, last week. But over the last 2 years, Dell authorized $5 billion in stock buybacks. According to best-selling author and podcaster Adam Grant, mass layoffs are counterproductive, and that hundreds of studies show that firms that downsize end up being less profitable than peers that find other ways to lower costs, like executive pay cuts. Currently, for corporate executives, the majority of their compensation comes from stock options and stock awards. When they use open market repurchases, it manipulates their company's stock prices to their own benefit, often making a ton of money for investment bankers, hedge fund managers, and corporate executives at the cost of workers, shareholders, and more. The growing use of stock buybacks since the mid-1980s has warped the economy, worsened inequality, distorting corporate decision-making, and diverting resources from investment in employees and hard assets. And think about this: Norfolk Southern, the company whose train derailed in Ohio and unleashed chemicals, made a record $12 billion in revenue last year. Instead of investing in better safety measures, what did the company do? It authorized $10 billion in stock buyback. Overall, the underlying problem with corporate buybacks and their obsession with stock price performance is that it makes U.S. households more vulnerable to a boom and bust economy. In the State of the Union, President Biden's call for quadrupling the tax on corporate stock buybacks is good, but banning buybacks done as an open market repurchases is better, just like it was before 1982.
So it's being reported that on Wednesday, Donald Trump is going to be visiting East Palestine, Ohio. And you go, why? Why is that? What can he possibly bring to East Palestine that would be helpful? Is he going to bring a box of paper towels with him? I mean, is that what's going to happen? You're going to throw out the magic paper towel roll? I mean, is this what we're going to see? And it's or is it really just about ego? Because he doesn't bring any resources with him. It's all about ego. And he's not going to bring anything helpful. All he's going to do is clog up the area with more hot air and not helpful. And this is the thing. This is the thing about my conservative friends who love to complain. Well, what has Joe Biden done? Joe Biden's done his job. His job is to support the states, get them what they need, get the EPA out there, get the Department of Transportation out there, and the machinery doing what it's supposed to be doing. That's happening. And to be honest, this is what Biden does, his job. We don't need to see mean tweets. We don't need to see, hey, look at how wonderful a job I'm doing. And this is what drives Republicans crazy. Because they need attention. They need to be fed with attention. It's not enough to do the right thing. They need the affirmation. They need the, oh, you're so wonderful. And again, this comes back down to that whole Christian extremist thing too. You know, I grew up in the Catholic Church at a time when they talked about peace and social justice, and that your good works shouldn't be something you display, which is why when we do charitable work, when we donate to charities, which we do every year, I never say who I donate to. I never want anything back. I never want someone to say, oh, look how wonderful you were. I do it because it's the right thing to do. Do it because I want to. And again, this comes back to I got into a whole bunch of trouble saying that we should be taxing churches, which I believe. I don't donate to a church or to a charitable organization because I want a tax break. Donate it because I think they do good work and I want them to continue to do good work. The tax break just comes because, well, we've made that policy because evidently some need that affirmation. And this is another thing. I mean, the Republican Party's hatred of government is, well, on display. Because evidently, according to them, everything's Biden's fault. And this is where this gets weird, because understand, a lot of this is their deregulation religion, their fetish of deregulating and allowing corporate America to do whatever it is they want. And, you know, they've used their media empire to do this, which is why I think it's so important right now that people pay attention what's going on with this lawsuit with the voting machine companies, with Dominion and the other one. Why it's so important to pay attention to what's being said in the court. Now, remember, all during the 2020, there was election fraud, and, you know, the Giuliani out there, you know, making these wild, bizarre claims, and Sidney Powell making these really bizarre claims. I said, you know, I don't listen to anything they say at the Four Seasons landscaping parking lot. Believe nothing there. What did they walk into court, put their hand on the Bible, swear to tell the whole truth, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help them, the God that they claim to love so much. What do they say then? That's what you pay attention to. And for me, it's what those lawyers bring into court, because there are consequences for not telling the truth. So now when the F channel has come forth with all of this information, and we now find out what I've been saying for years, that none of these people believe the BS that they're spewing. It's all about the money. It's all about duping the poorly educated into continuing to consume the outrage candy. It's the same thing with right-wing radio. It's the same thing with a lot of media portions. It's about getting you angry enough that I can't turn away. I've got to consume more. I got to have more because I got to have more information to attack those people at work. Or this is what they were masterful at. My question now becomes, all of the dupes and people, with their mouth open on the toilet, doing their research, watching Hannity, will they believe what he said? Will those people believe what the F channel said in court, and that they're not news, they're entertainment? And that they didn't buy the election fraud stuff. They tried to get a reporter fired because, that reporter challenged the president. It's bad for our stock price. Will they believe it? Or sadly, what I know is going to happen, they're not going to believe what was said in court. They're not going to believe, because that's, it's court, it's government, it's bad. Because they've been trained like Pavlovian dogs to think anything that government has to do with bad. What I see on the F channel, more. We're in scary times. But the stuff going on in court, everyone should be paying attention to. And look, fortunately, I think there's a chance that the F channel, they're effed. They're the F channel, all right. This lawsuit potentially could take them down, cost them billions, and maybe even take them down. Wouldn't that be good?
We are AFGE. We support our nation's military and our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders and provide services to our nation's seniors. Across the country and here in Washington, D.C., the American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At the Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right-left or red-blue, when they are and always have been up-down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working-class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.